Earlier, I talked about creating custom CSS files, and I'd said that the best place to put those files is in the top-level site in your site collection, because anything here can be easily shared across all sites in that site collection. And the best place to put them in that top-level site is in the style library, which I can get to from the All Files section. Now, in SharePoint 2010, even with just the free SharePoint 2010 Foundation, every time a new site collection is created, it adds this style library to the top-level site, and it makes it a good place for deploying CSS files and image files in a branding situation. Now, there's nothing magical about the style library. It's just a library. It's just becoming the expected place to put this kind of content. Now, I've reset everything in this site collection. It's just a team site at the top-level site here, right out of the box. So I'm going to start from scratch here and put in a really simple CSS file here. I'll call it custom.css. And in that, put in a very straightforward rule just so we can see it take effect. And I'll just put a font style of italic. And I'll save that in my style library. Now, if you're working with a sub-site instead of a top-level site, you're not going to have a style library under your All Files section. But that's not a big problem. You could either create a CSS file directly in the root of the site, or just create your own folder or library to put it in. Okay, so we have this file. Then what? Well, we need to edit the master page to point to this. Now, in sites with publishing enabled, you can use a web page to change this, but without publishing enabled, like this site, we need to change the master page if we want every page to link to this custom CSS file. So I'm going to open up and edit v4.master, and I had reset this to the basic site definition, so we're going from scratch here. Now, in the head section, there's nothing that would prevent us from anywhere here coming down and just putting in a standard link tag and just actually linking to our own content the way I would on any SharePoint site. This would be perfectly fine. Although, do remember that there is actually a little CSS tag that's being done here. Here on line 19 in v4.master, we've got this SharePoint :CSS link. What's happening here is this is what's responsible for generating the CSS entries. If I look at the source of this homepage here, the CSS link tag in the master page is what's going to cause these style sheets to be linked to when the page is rendered. So while we can add a standard link tag, the official SharePoint way is to volunteer to be part of this CSS link area. And here's how we do that. I'm going to jump into my master page. I'm going to add a new tag, and it actually doesn't really matter where we put it, but I'm going to put it beside the CSS link here. Before or after doesn't matter. And the tag is this: SharePoint :CSS registration. We are registering our CSS file so that when the CSS link tag is generated, we'll be included in that. And because this is executed on the server, I'm going to put in a little run@=server tag. You'll see that on a lot of those SharePoint tags, if not all of them, in fact. And then what we need to have is the name of our CSS file. Now, the path here can get a little tricky. Depending on how your SharePoint server machine is configured, you may be able to just get away with typing in a / and then saying style library and then the name of your file. But what I'm going to do is a path from the root of my server, which means I need to put in the sites /team/ custom.css. Now there's one more little attribute to put, which is the after attribute, because we want to make sure that when our CSS file is being linked to, it comes after core v4.css. That should do. / to close this tag, and there's our CSS registration. Well, let's go and see if it worked. Before I save v4.master, I'm just going to go over to my team site homepage and just refresh the page, make sure I'm just seeing an up-to-date version here. Looks pretty normal. So I'm going to jump back into SharePoint Designer, and I'm going to save my change here. It's going to give me a warning that I am changing this file from the underlying site definition, the default master page, and I know that. That's okay. Then it makes the change. I'm going to jump back over to the browser, refresh the page, and I can see all the text is now changing to italicized. So it certainly did seem to pick up that custom.css file. Let's double check it. I'm going to right click and view source. And I can see that yes, indeed, we're now linking to that custom CSS file, and that link is coming after core v4.css. You can add multiple CSS registration tags and use the after attribute to control where they're going to be located. But do bear in mind, it's the same thing as on any website, that you don't want to go crazy with the amount of CSS files that you have.